think associations tend to be so much more, inclined to wait and hear from their members and to wait and take the temperature of the industry and to see the mood of the industry. They want to see how their partners, their members, how are they doing? And then that leads them to setting their goals and planning their communication strategies, their marketing strategies, just setting their plan for the year. And I think that sometimes is a flawed way to look at it. Not that associations don't have to constantly listen and adapt to those things, but it shouldn't prevent them from going first, from saying, well, we're the association, we're the leaders. Here's our perspective on what should happen. Here's our perspective on what the industry priorities should be, which is what you see on the business side, right? Like the marketing team doesn't wait to hear from the board of directors about X, Y, and Z. The marketing team of, again, I keep using GoPro as my example, the marketing team of GoPro comes up with a point of view. And if the board and the CFO wants to knock it down, then they'll deal with it and they'll work through it, but they have their perspective. So I think that's one thing associations could probably learn from the corporate world, is to be more strong with their opinions and their point of view. And, you end up with these board members sometimes who are so important to associations. They're at such big companies. They're so valuable in terms of the membership that, of course, we want to get their opinions. We don't want to ruffle their feathers. And I think sometimes that's to the detriment, because most boards I've worked with, they want to hear that. They want to hear what you think first. They want new ideas. They want new approaches. So I say that a lot to my associations. They'd probably benefit sometimes from acting more like a company, more like a corporation. Concepts on how to brainstorm, how to empower your teams, how to work together, how to open yourself up to feedback. Very simple concepts, but told through really interesting stories of mostly Google products and crazy technologies from Google and other places that got invented or built starting with culture and not starting with programmers and engineers. So that's what I want. How do we create a culture that values feedback, a culture that encourages feedback? And how do we practically, set up the actual infrastructure to gather and process feedback? One of the Google stories I like to tell is about Google Glasses. Do you guys remember Google Glasses? Like you would, glasses that had like the smart screen in them that.
10 years too early, maybe?
What'd you say?
Yep. I said 10 years too early, perhaps.
Yeah, I say this all the time. It's going to come back from Google or from someone else. A day is coming when we all wear stuff like that. But yeah, it was, this augmented reality, virtual reality product. You had your lens and the little glasses screen, and really cool, really smart, really interesting project. Probably at the time, the largest scale virtual reality project that had ever been undertaken. Super complicated, super intense. And I ask the audience when I give speeches, I say, the first time somebody walked into a meeting at Google and pitched this idea of Google Glasses, how long do you think it took? And I'll ask the three of you this question. How long do you think it took until they had built the first working prototype? I want to guess how long that took.
1 month.
Yeah,
1 month?
Yeah, I would guess a month. Or maybe it was already done
relatively quickly, because I thought they had some early prototypes that were made out of cardboard.
So Google Cardboard, I talk about that in some speeches too. That's a slightly different thing. Google Cardboard actually came after Google Glasses. But so 1 month is most of guesses I get, as you can imagine, are even higher than that. It's 1 month, a year, 2 years, 5 years. And I show a slide of the first ever version of Google Glasses. And I tell them the answer to that question is 45 minutes. But the idea I tell in my speeches is that, there's a very real limit to how good we can make things, to how perfect we can get things when we keep it in our own heads, when we are jotting our ideas down on our own personal notepad, right? And the limit to how good we can make things expands so much faster when we get other people involved in the process. So practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes consistent. Practice plus feedback makes perfect. And it's one of my favorite quotes, and I tell that in some of my speeches. So that's the type of concept. This launch, learn, and improve idea is about how quickly can I take my idea and get it into the hands of people who can make it better. My coworkers, my customers, whatever it is. So that's kind of the type of story I tell. And then I'll usually work in a couple from brands outside of Google as well. But I like the Google Glasses one, which also Google Glass always lets me piggyback into another good innovation principle. Everybody always talks about how failure is a good thing. So I talk a little bit about that idea of failing well. It's something we used to say at Google, and how it's really hard to do. It's hard to really change the culture around failing. We talk about how Google Glass kind of failed. No one wears them today. But when Google Glass failed, in reality, we had research and technology and code and all this stuff. And because we didn't look at the project as a failure, we didn't look at the people as failures, we were able to say, hey, where else can we use this? And at the time, there was another company within Google called Niantic Labs. We've since spun it out as its own company that Google's a stakeholder in. And they used some of those technologies. And I don't have the details on exactly what they used and what they didn't, but they took some of that research, they took some of those insights, and they used it to make Pokemon Go, which I believe is somewhere around $4 billion in revenue at this point, which is pretty good if any part of it came from the remnants of the failed Google Glass. So again, that's why it was like this thing you put on your finger and you used it to clean your tongue. This is years ago. It's supposed to help with germs and bad breath and things like that. So they were from Utah and they got their product sold in like one Walmart in Utah or a couple Walmarts in Utah. And it was going pretty well, but they could not get a meeting with Walmart's headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas. They tried to get meetings. They sent them all these packages, promotional stuff. They put these big kits together, could not get a meeting. So they decided to run a Facebook ad campaign. And this is probably 15 years ago. So this is not even close to modern marketing technology. Run an ad on Facebook, just targeting Walmart employees who live near the headquarters in Arkansas. And the ad has Aura Brush in it, I think it has a video in it. And it says, Walmart employees have bad breath. They should start carrying the Aura Brush. They spent, I think, and you can find the case study, it's on YouTube. I think they spent $27 on the marketing campaign. And they got a phone call from someone at Walmart saying, we saw it, please stop running these ads. And they also took a meeting with them. And they also got picked up to sell nationally in Walmarts. I don't know how much money they made, but I'm assuming it's somewhere in the 9 figures off of selling those nationally at Walmart for $27 of ad spend, because they realized, oh, there's this one super specific audience we could go after. It's a really cool case study. Like I said, you can find it on YouTube. It's Aura Brush, O-R-A Brush.